Hello, good evening. This is the Somerville Historic Preservation Commission. This is our meeting. I would like to call this meeting to order. It is 6:50 p.m. on Monday, June 28th. And before we get going, I'd like just to read off that pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission will be conducted by remote participation. An audio recording of these proceedings will be available upon request to historic@somervillemass.gov. And I think that's all of our formalities, right?
Correct.
And as there are no new cases or cases of any sort, we're going to go straight to business items. And we'll start right off with the Central Street Local Historic District Preliminary Study Report.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. So not that long ago, I sent you all a draft of what I would like to present as the study report. Briefly, I'll describe what we're proposing, and then I'll be asking for you to, I'll take any questions and ask for you to take a vote as well. This is not the final. This is not the final state in which I would submit the preliminary study report. It'll be much more polished and put together than this. But we have looked at, there are 8 properties that are individually designated right now on the Central Street and Broadway intersecting area. And if you recall, after the discussion about 187 Central Street and the possibility of losing that building, the HPC directed staff to, did we lose Alan?
We appear to have.
Okay, oh, there he is.
Back. Mr. Bingham has returned.
You directed staff to start studying the area to create a local historic district. So what staff is proposing, and as you can see in the document that I sent you, is to take all 8 individually designated buildings and add and combine them into one district, while adding 4 new buildings to that cluster as well. And those 4 new buildings to be added would be 201 Central, which is B'nai B'rith, which is a Byzantine revival, and then 187 Central, 183 Central, and 181 Central, which are all colonial revival and create a very tight colonial revival streetscape. One of the things that we've noticed that architecturally, the properties that are already designated and those that are to be designated form a very linear process of architectural development in the street, starting with Greek revival of 170 Central and ending at Byzantine revival with B'nai B'rith in like the late teens, early 20s. The one sort of major architectural type for Somerville that isn't reflected in this district, in this proposed district, is Italianate. There's one building on this upper portion of Central Street that kind of reads like Italianate, but the only way you can really tell that is, yeah, to a degree from the arched roof, but also, or from the steep pitch to the roof, but from an arched window underneath the front-facing gable. So that one is not really anything that we're considering right now. I think that our interest is to protect that colonial revival streetscape. Fortunately, B'nai B'rith is also interested in being involved as well, considering the importance of B'nai B'rith not only to the streetscape, but to have that ecclesiastical building, the other ecclesiastical building, which is the Winter Hill Congregational Church, both in one district within like a property of each other. And then the importance of B'nai B'rith and Dr. Dickerman, who lived for so many years in 187 Central, which is the subject of the demolition delay. There are existing Form Bs, which I had sent to you. We're finishing up the Form Bs for 187, 181, and 183 Central, just taking the information that we have and combining them in those documents to send to Mass Historic. What I would ideally like to do is see if we can have a brief discussion of the boundaries and an agreement of the boundaries of the general agreement as to why this is important architecturally and certainly socially, with what we saw going on with the Dickerman household in particular, and allow for staff to make any final updates and put it in the proper order, and then send the preliminary study report to the Massachusetts Historical Commission so that they can start their 60-day review period. And I would be looking to send that to the Massachusetts Historical Commission probably no later than a couple of days from now, June 30th.
Okay. I've read over your document, and there's nothing in there that shouldn't be there. I don't think so. I think it looks fine. Is anybody else, if you all read it, or do you have thoughts on where it's going?
I think it's excellent.
Sorry, who was that?
That was me. I think it's excellent. I fully support it.
Yeah.
Mr. Bingham, yes.
And I think it's excellent too. It seems like just the right appropriate collection of buildings.
Okay, good. Anything else from Vice Chair Kelly or Mr. Falvey?
Unmute myself first. I just wanted to discuss if the local historic district is created, that additional properties can be brought in at a later date. So if, for example, perhaps, some of the nice examples on Tennyson or something like that, would we be able to bring those in potentially to this, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that would be considering expanding an existing district. It's often easiest to expand an existing district that is obviously close to another property that you want to bring in. So if we wanted to bring it down Browning Road at one point, that might make sense. Or maybe that would become its own district because it's so unique. But yeah, you can always do that. You follow the same process as before, but when you bring as what we're doing now, so it still follows the same process, irrespective of the number of structures that you propose to be in that district. So yeah, it can certainly be done in the future. The question is now so which district am I actually expanding? Am I actually expanding the 400 Broadway district, or am I expanding the 158 Central district? Well, I think either one that I choose will be just fine, since they're all individual as it is. But it really makes sense to just bring them all together into one rubric.
So are there any other immediately adjacent districts that we ought to be thinking about more seriously as part of this process, like Tennyson or like Browning, particularly if
so I met with the council, the city councilors who represent this area. So Mark Niedergang has the far side of Central Street where the row houses are, and Councilor Klingon, Jesse Klingon, has the side of Central Street that leads to Browning. So the line is literally right down the middle. And so, together we all talked about what they as councilors and as their, what they were interested in also for their ward. And so I looked at what we have proposed currently, what I have to you. And then I also looked at that plus Browning. And Browning would really include a lot of structures about which we don't necessarily have a ton of research, and some really interesting structures. And then ultimately the feeling was for them is that they wanted to see that the case could very easily be made for what we have proposed currently, in particular the streetscape, that those additional structures present, right? They're sort of mini streetscape, and then how that plays into the architectural metamorphosis of Central Street itself, central to Broadway. So they were more comfortable with that at this point than they were with making something very, very large, much larger and possibly more challenging to move forward. But in the future, they'd certainly be amenable to looking at something separate for Browning, or maybe even other things on Central Street.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I have nothing else to add to this. Anybody else? I think we've all kind of weighed in. So what do we need? We just need a vote to authorize you to proceed with the preliminary study report.
Yes, I would recommend making a motion that that you agree with the staff's recommended boundaries of they're interested in calling it the Upper Central Street Local Historic District. You can say that if you want, with staff's recommended boundaries of that district, and authorize staff to submit this preliminary study report to the Massachusetts Historical Commission once it's in its final form, and once the final touches have been put on the latest Form Bs.
Okay.
You could also say what she said.
She said, yeah.
Taking into consideration the suggestion by staff.
I
Maybe,
move that we vote on the suggestion by Ms. White as she described. Does that cover it?
Mhm.
I think so.
Okay.
To submit the preliminary study report.
To submit the preliminary study report.
Who do we have taking?
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Bingham. Well, let's have a vote then. All in favor of accepting the motion raised by Vice Chair Kelly? Say
Aye.
yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we'll go around the room here. Looking at my screen here, I'll start off Vice Chair Kelly.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bowers,
Yes.
and Mr. Bingham.
Yes.
And I, Chair Parks, will vote yes on that as well. So it's unanimous.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Sure.
Now,
Next thing we have on our list is minutes. We have 4 sets of meeting minutes. Are those, do we have those?
you do. Those were sent to you in anticipation of the June 15th meeting that we ended up not being able to hold thanks to the state legislature.
Yeah, all right. Let's just take them one by one. I need to open them up.
That's okay. I think
Yeah,
11.4 is the one that you don't have.
I need to go back and find them again. So while you're doing that,
So Ms. Chekowitz emailed those to us on Friday, June 11th. And there was a second email shortly after with 2 corrected files.
Thank you. Okay. Who do we have taking notes tonight since,
I'm taking them really quickly, actually.
all right.
You said they were emailed on June 11th?
No, I take that back.
Yes,
June 11th were substantive
not-
memos. I see they were from Sarah on June 14th.
June 14th. Okay.
Okay, yes, I see 3 sets of minutes. Um, Okay, so the November 4th minutes are not included yet? Is that what you told us earlier?
Correct.
All right, so I see February, March, and April minutes. Shall we just go through these one by one? Do people want another moment to get up to speed with them?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Um,
Did we lose Alan again?
I'm here.
Oh, you're there. You're just off camera. Okay.
Yeah, I'm reading the minutes.
Ms. White, which were the minutes that you said The fourth set of minutes, was that November 4th?
Correct, Mr. Bauer, that one we don't have yet.
I'm looking at the minutes from February 16th, and it said
Mhm.
says we approved minutes for November 4th.
Oh, you did? Correct.
That's
I mean, it didn't mean correct. I mean, crikey. That's what I was looking for. Good.
So as my son would say, we can kill two birds with one bird killing device when we approve.
Yes,
February 16th.
exactly. How's everybody doing?
I'm just about through the last ones. Who else ready to vote on these?
I'm about ready.
All right.
I think I still need another minute or two. I'm ready.
Okay. Who else is not ready? Just want to check one thing. Okay, so let's bring back my screen so I can see all. So let's just take them chronologically with the February minutes. Does anybody have any revisions to those or changes they'd like seen?
So I have a couple matters as a form. A couple of them dealing with the form of the minutes, and then a question sort of about findings generally. So we deal first with the form. So I'm looking right now, and this is sort of an example, but there are a couple of recent minutes on page 4 regarding 13 Allen Street.
This is the February minutes?
Mm-hmm.
This is February minutes.
Okay.
So 13 Allen Street begins in the bottom of page 3, I think. Yes, the bottom of page 3. And then HPC action is on page 4.
Page 3 is, okay, so 13 Allen.
13
Yep.
begins in the bottom of page 3, and then it finishes on page 4. And
Yeah.
it says HPC action, the commission voted 7-0 to declare the building not significant. And as a matter of form, I want to suggest we change the way we do those. And it may be that if that's literally the way we voted on this, that we should leave it. But I would have said we voted not to declare the building significant, because our job is to determine whether it's significant or not, but that we don't affirmatively say things are not significant. So I would have said that we voted not to declare the building significant. And if we use that form, I think we are somewhat careless about our votes of yes or no. Is a yes vote in favor of significance or not significance?
Mm-hmm.
I think in context here, it's clear what it was. All 7 people were saying that the building was not significant. But I want to suggest that we be more careful in form about those, and that we be careful about how we characterize the roll call vote, so people can look at it and see what the significance is of our votes.
I think you to your point, Mr. Bauer, you bring up a good one. Whenever you bring something to a vote for significance, I have always, I'm not sure there might have been the occasional exception to this, but you always say, you know, in the matter of whatever, 13 Allen Street, you know, something like that, you know, basically you never say like, is it not, that you know, 13 Allen Street is not significant. You always say, you know, that 13 Allen Street, you know, is historically significant, all in favor, aye, all opposed, nay. Like you always do it that way in the affirmative. You're right. So I see what your point is in the way that the secretary wrote the vote up. The meaning ultimately is still the same. The outcome is still the same, but the language of the vote is different, even though the outcome is still the same.
So if this really is the way that we said it, we should leave it here. I want to suggest that in the future we be more careful about those.
Mm-hmm.
If this is not, and if we didn't do it this way, if it's just the way that the minutes got written up, then I would change them. Does anybody have any recollection of whether this was a vote in favor of not significant, or whether it was simply a vote not in favor of significant?
I certainly don't remember at this point. So I wouldn't be surprised if it were the manner in which it were written up by the person taking notes.
Yeah.
And we can be cognizant of that going forward.
And if so, then if it's so, then we should leave it this way.
Yeah.
And my recollection, though not 100%, is that that was done because it seemed to be the likely outcome. So that it would not be found significant. And so I think it was sort of turned so that everybody would be in agreement saying yes, that it was not significant. Because I think from our discussions, it was fairly clear that that was the direction we were going to go.
I don't recall. That question seems to come up whenever we have those votes, though. Like, are we positively voting a negative thing or negatively voting a positive, sort of like two slices of the same coin or two sides of the same coin. I would agree that we should, in the future, make it an affirmation that is, like, I would agree with what Dick said there. We should be consistent about it and have it be the vote is whether or not it is significant. The absence of a yes just means it's not voted significant.
Right.
And with respect to these previous ones, I don't know, the default, since we can't know for sure, I guess would be to give the secretary the benefit of the doubt there and just say he accurately represents what we said. But I don't know, short of just delaying the approval and asking him to confirm that, I'd say I'd feel okay with just rolling with this incidence here.
Yeah, I think you'd be okay. I think you'd be okay with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And you had some other issue, Dick?
But the other one, this is a question for our staff. When we are voting against significance or against preferably preserved, do we actually need to make any findings? If we're voting in favor of those, we certainly need to make findings because we are restricting the owner and we need to make a record that shows why we did that. And if we are saying not significant, or we're saying not preferably preserved, do we need to go through the exercise and effort of making findings? Or is it sufficient to just say no and move on to the next matter?
Yeah, you do need to go through the exercise of making findings because you basically need to make supportive statements for why you are finding something to be not significant. Is it because it retains, all the architectural integrity has been removed, or it's been added to so many times, or whatever it is.
Okay.
It's lost its context. Yeah, so you do have to do that.
And that's a fairly new thing.
Okay, good, thank you.
Generally, we have, so we have to get in the habit of doing that. Okay.
We'll be here to remind you too, but yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that was all that I had on the February minutes. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything?
No.
All right. Well, I guess I would then move that we approve the February 16th minutes.
I second that motion.
Okay. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye.
And that's correct. Go through the group here. Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
and I, Eric Parks, vote yes also. March minutes.
No specific comments on the March minute.
I had one, I think they were in March, and this is on page 7 with regard to 27 Allen Street. Under public comment, it says Kate Byrne, president of Community Center, right next to the property. Was that Cass?
I don't know.
So it seems like if it was, we should identify her as such.
Oh, was the person Cass?
Yes.
I don't know. It's what Adam heard, so I don't know.
Okay, I think if we knew, it'd be nice to include that. If we don't, then we should leave it.
Right.
Well, I have one comment which seems to be pervasive through what I'm reading on the minutes. Is at the top, it says Somerville Historic Preservation Commission, Tuesday, September 15th, 2020.
Oh,
And yet
he
we're
used an
talking
old
about March.
form.
Now that happens also in the April minutes.
Yeah,
So I
okay.
think we need to look at how we set the headers and footers on
Yeah.
these.
Good
I
catch
think
there.
I think he's just been reusing an old form, so, to take his minutes. So when you take the vote on each of these, if you would say, amending the date,
The header.
the date header, yeah.
I had no particular comments on these minutes. Does anybody else, other than the one that Ellen raised up?
So I now have the answer about Cass, which is actually a two-part answer. So one of them is, it is Cass. That's the community center. It's actually, I think, their Head Start buildings are right next to the development on Allen Street. So we should identify her, and we had the spelling of her name wrong. It's B-Y-R-N-E.
Okay.
And she is the president of the Community Action Agency of Somerville.
This is page 7, you said?
It's on page 4. I have it. I may have said something, but I'm seeing it on page 4. It's under, this is 27 Allen public comment. And it says Kate Byrne, B-U-R-N, president of Community Center right next to property. And it should be Kate B-Y-R-N-E. And she's the president of the Community Action Agency of Somerville, which has a center
Hmm.
right next
Right
to the
there.
property.
I remember she was concerned about that.
Yep. Okay. Any other comments on these minutes?
I move to approve the minutes with the name corrections that Mr. Bauer just suggested and the header date correction that was noted as being needed.
Okay, any second?
A second then.
Fine. All in favor of approving these minutes of the March minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's go through this. Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
and Chair Parks votes yes. Okay, and then we have the April minutes. I had one comment. Pull them back up again here. Unless I just missed it, on 125 Highland Avenue, the church, there doesn't appear to be any description of discussion within our commission. And I'm not sure what we would do about that. We have the findings and the vote.
Yeah, there was extensive discussion. I would recommend then that what you do is you table it, table the vote on the April minutes and have staff go through the recording so that we can capture the deliberations of the commission, because those should have been captured in there.
Yeah, and that's kind of important when they're.
Absolutely huge.
And it also has the same date header issue that Ellen brought up.
Yeah. I also have a note to
And-
myself to create a new template for Adam to work with so that it's blank and he can write in the dates every single time. That doesn't mean you won't copy and paste, because we all do that too.
There's one other edit to make on page 5, where it says that Councillor Niedergang actually lived next door to the temple. He didn't, he lived next door to the temple. He didn't own a store, he actually was next door. Just a typo.
Who are they saying lived next door to the temple?
Yeah, lived next door. S-T-O-R-E. It should be next door, D-O-O-R.
But who are they saying lived
Which
there?
page? is
Niedergang
it
on
Ron?
page 5.
He doesn't live next door to the temple.
Well, you know, there's an error
I think he
there.
was, he may have been referring to, I think he was referring to the doctor who lived next door to the
To the
temple,
Dr.
or
Dickerman.
worked next door to the temple.
Yeah, it seems confusing.
Yeah. Maybe there needs to be like a sick in there, and right, like Dr. Dickerman.
The doctor who delivered all those babies.
Yes.
I'm not sure what the relevance of the babies has to being next door to the temple. Perhaps Dick could
Not a
enlighten us
thing.
on that.
Okay.
So I think this reference to Councilor Niedergang, where it says member of synagogue next door, I think what it means is he's a member of the synagogue, which is next door,
Yeah.
spelled correctly, as Ellen points out. Next door, he's been a member for 30 years of the synagogue, which is next door to the property that's under consideration, 187 Central.
Yep.
I have one name revision just because I happen to know this person. Under the comments from the public for the Highland Ave Church, I'm looking at page 9. It's Delia K, not Dahlia.
Delia.
Yes.
And this set also has a couple more of those instances where there's an affirmative vote not to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So on page 3, it says voted 5-0 not to approve it, which has us voting yes in favor of not doing something.
Sounds like he needs to capture the motions more clearly.
Right, and it's possible that the motions are being made that way.
I think they were
So
being
this
made
is partly a question of how they're presented. And so I would ask the chairman on most of these, we are voting on a sort of standard thing. Approval of permits, determination of significance, determination of preferably preserved. And I would help think if the chairman would actually state it in the right form so that we can vote on it. So the chair, because the things that are in front of us in applications, I don't think need motions. Only business actions need motions, but the other things are in front of us based on other people's applications. So we could just say, this is in front of the commission on a request for a demolition permit, and the question is whether the building is preferably preserved. All in favor of determining it preferably preserved, people can say yes in favor of preferably preserved, no against preferably preserved.
I think that's important, Dick, to be able to say for the purposes of, because something could be significant in one aspect
Right.
and considered such by people, but for the purposes of demolition review, according to the guidelines that we have, it may not be significant. So I think that's a very important distinction to bring up.
Yeah, we'll snap that up. I'm sure we'll be instances in the very next meeting. So
Okay.
we'll express that, and if I miss it, just remind me.
Okay. Yeah, we can help with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other comments on these the April minutes? I guess we're not going to vote on them. What will we do? Vote to continue them, or?
Okay.
Yeah, I would just say you wouldn't even have to vote to continue it. I think you could just let it be and just say, okay, staff, will correct. We'll listen to the recording to get the commission deliberations, and then we'll bring it back again to you next week.
Okay.
Or next time, not next week.
Sure.
There shall be nothing next week from us.
All right.
And next time, are we likely to be in person?
Oh, so thank you for bringing that up really quickly. So the governor passed legislation or signed legislation that allows us to hold these remote meetings until April of 2022. So we will continue to be remote.
Okay.
Even though we can be remote, is there some point that we're going to go back to meeting in person?
That's unclear right now as to when, because so city buildings aren't open right now. And we have a very significant problem with regard to having meeting space that we can use. For example, the high school, for example, doesn't have all of its occupancy stuff in line. So the public can't be in there, right? So we can't hold meetings there. The VNA, haven't even heard anything from them yet. And I wouldn't be surprised if we might not have access to the VNA for quite a long time. They have a very vulnerable population.
Yeah.
That leaves the council chambers, which the council has the right to. So I might be able to schedule it, but if they decide to co-opt it before I've run a legal ad, then they get to use that space, and then we have to scurry around and find another one. So we have a real dearth of meeting space, and the conference room on the 3rd floor is too small now because that's been made even smaller than it was before. And the thing about if you hold a meeting in public is the public has the right to have access to it, not stand out in the hall for the meeting, but to have access to the meeting. So it's a bit of a challenge right now. Say that again?
It's impressive because that was already basically a closet that we're meeting in. So the thought of making that even smaller.
Yeah. You thought you were gonna look behind a chair and find mops. Yeah, so that's even smaller. So yeah, for right now, and I would say honestly for the foreseeable future, we will, even once the buildings are open, even when the buildings are open, people are going to be required to stay a certain distance apart. And in city buildings, at least for the time being, everybody's going to have to wear a mask going in, right? Because I might be vaccinated, you might be vaccinated, we don't know whoever else is, and there are vulnerable people out there. So it's a tight space, and God knows it can get a little hot, especially when the subject matter is challenging. So yeah, so I think I would plan on being remote until April unless something comes up, and then we'd let you know ahead of time.
I think it's exceptionally prudent that we continue to do this remotely. This thing is much worse than most people realize. And people that do get infected and come down with COVID have long-term chronic complications to multiple organs. So please be very careful and let's not preempt this and jump in too quickly.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that too many people will.
Yeah. And we're not at 70% vaccination rate in the country yet, which is the sort of the lowest threshold of herd immunity. So
do we know what the rate is in Somerville, by the way?
I don't know.
Okay.
And over 4 million people have had, or I believe fully vaccinated in Massachusetts. But yeah, I don't know what that means really in terms of amount of
I think the
population.
important number is that over 17,500 Massachusetts residents have died from this, Dick. I think that's the number we should focus on.
Mhm.
Until everybody is vaccinated, I'm very much aware that this thing is going to be with us for quite a while.
Yeah, I am fearful of the fall. Mr. Chairman, did you want to do CPA update? Is there anything there?
Hold on a minute. Yes. Mr. Bingham, you're our CPA person, right?
Yeah, I don't have any real updates to provide for you. We're currently in the process of looking at what's happening for next year. I was at West Branch Library today, which, as you know, was a project funded largely by CPA funds, especially for access and sealing of the envelope. And that looks like that's going to open in July, mid-July sometime. That's not a promise. Okay, this is what I get as a best estimate. And we're working on several other things that where CPA could come to light for historic preservation, but we have a little bit better process in place now. The documentation is better for applications, and clearly the applications coming in seem to be better, although I'm not sure at this point in time whether some of the applicants have really registered to come before the commission for review and approval first. But we'll see as that transpires in the next meeting. Because that's one of the things that was at issue, is that applicants for historic preservation funding would come before the CPA or the CPC before coming to the Historic Preservation Commission. And as we know, they've got to be approved by the Historic Preservation Commission before they can get approved for funding. So many people had reversed the process and taken liberties, we might say, in the process. And hopefully that we've remedied that so that the process will be followed and make it much more predictable for all and cut out unnecessary delays. That's the hope anyway, but we are dealing with the public.
Okay.
That's all I have to add.
All right. Thank you for that.
And if I could, we have hired a CPA manager.
Oh,
Good.
She will be starting hopefully within the next couple of weeks. I'm not exactly sure of her start date yet, but I think you'll find she's quite excellent.
So Alan will no longer be the city representative.
No, but he will be the manager of that CPA manager. So she will report to him. Yep.
There's nothing else on our agenda. I had just a random question. We had a roof collapse on a building over on Medford Street. That was a building that had a demo delay on it already, or did that already come and go?
Which one?
Medford and Walnut.
Oh.
It's a nice.
Yeah, the brick one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that delay is come and gone.
Okay, so it's definitely going to go now. They had their roof just fell in this last weekend, I think, in the rain.
Oh, too much rain collected on the roof and did it in.
Yeah, it sounds like there was a clogged drain and it then collapsed. And it damaged. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but there were lots of cars being stored inside.
Right. Yeah, fortunately, no one was hurt.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anything else we want to talk about that we're allowed to talk about? Or should we just adjourn?
Well, considering there's nothing else on the agenda, we should probably adjourn it. Don't want to get into hot water.
Right. Non-historic preservation, favorite color? No. All right, well then, I guess we're done. Anybody want to move for a closure?
I'll move. Ryan, Mr. Falvey moved first. I'll second.
Then, oh wait, vote. All in favor?
I,
Robin,
yes.
Brian, Dick,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
and Eric, yes.
And that's at 7:45 PM.
Yep. All right. Well, we're on for next week, next month, whenever it is.
Next month. Yes, and thank you all for doing this. I really, really, really appreciate it. Sorry we couldn't have done last, whatever it was, week and a half ago, but Wendy and I have talked, and what we're going to try and do is make sure that we put those June people first on the agenda. Seems like it's only fair. And then we'll get through the July folks. So
Will we be able to get through it all? Should we actually plan on 2 meetings?
I think that you should be able to get through it all, because we have had some additional applications come in, right, Wendy? But we're still waiting for them to be complete applications because they haven't sent us all the material. Is that a fair statement?
I think we are up to 3 or 4 additional applications for the July meeting.
So I guess I would say that, you know, reread the stuff from the June that was anticipated for the June meeting first. By the way, for that meeting, there's no memorandum of agreement for 24 Webster Ave. You did that one already, and that was just an accidental carryover. But reread everything that we sent you in preparation for the June meeting so that you have that fresh in your mind for July. And then Wendy will be sending along the July properties in another couple of weeks or so. But I think that what we need to do is we need to make sure that we keep, you know, applicant presentations, quote unquote, to a minimum, and don't let them drag on. They don't let them drone on. We'll say like, okay, you know, anything further you'd quickly like to tell us, and now we'd like to get on and deliberate and ask you questions. And then we'll be limiting, you know, certainly public comment to 2 minutes each. We're not going to we're going to be in line with other boards that way. So I think that that'll help too.
Thank you.
Cool. So thank you all for doing this very much. And stay cool.
See you all next month.
Thanks, Sarah.
Be well.
You too. See you later, folks.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.